What is up, boys? We are back, and today we're going to be looking at the top 10 most recent UFC cards, and we're going to be ranking them on their level of entertainment, on how good the actual cards were. You know, this isn't on paper. On paper, some of these cards would be very low, but it is about how they actually delivered. You know, how these cards actually came out. Similar to what Dana White says at post-fight press conferences when he's like, hey, everyone said this card was going to be bad. Well, look at it now. Similar to that, we're going to see how the card actually delivered instead of how it was on paper. Before we get into my rankings, I guess you could say, make sure to subscribe. Let's just subscribe, dude. We're at like 860 subscribers right now. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I do believe that is possible. Just subscribe. It takes 1 second. It would mean a lot. And yeah, man, let's get into it. Number 10, the 10th worst recent UFC card we got. I guess that's how I would say it. It's gonna be this: Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. It's not even just out of the last 10, dude. You know, I'm ranking the last 10 UFC pay-per-views that we got. This is number 1 in that aspect. I mean, this is number 10 in that aspect. But it's genuinely one of the worst cards ever, dude. Yeah, go back to UFC 10. I'm sure this card, UFC 10, was more entertaining than UFC 312. 312, dude. In the main event, we had Sean Strickland take it on Dricus du Plessis. Just a boring fight, wasn't it? It was just a boring fight. It was just Dricus du Plessis just piecing up Sean Strickland for 5 rounds. He was just battering Strickland. The only somewhat entertaining moment in this fight was when Dricus kind of hit him with like an overhand right. He popped Strickland's nose. Sean Strickland's nose was bleeding everywhere. Then Sean Strickland popped it back into place. That was decently entertaining, but Sean Strickland was just getting obliterated. You know, it was funny seeing Sean Strickland go back to his corner, and Eric Nixick was just disappointed in him. And yeah, in the co-main event of this card, we had Zhang Weili versus Tatiana Suarez. Again, that was just very boring, dude. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, man. That was a very boring fight. Just nothing remarkable happened in that fight. Zhang Weili had an iconic title defense, dude. She went in there, did what she did best, came out as champ yet again. Tatiana Suarez somehow was a favorite in that fight. Very boring fight. Nothing really remarkable happened in the co-main event and the main event. And we had Justin Taffa versus Talson Texture on the main card. We had Rodolfo Bellato versus Jake Matthews, or Jimmy Crute, sorry, on the main card. Just very boring. Like, I don't care about any of those fighters. I don't even really care about Sean Strickland and Dricus, man. Like, I don't understand how the UFC gave us this and actually expected us to care. Like, this card made me mad watching it. I watched it because I don't really know, dude. I'm brainwashed into watching every UFC card. I still watched it. It was boring as heck. And I don't really know what to say, dude. Maybe there was some sleepers like Ilia Topuria, his brother debuting. We had Wang Kong, that random little Asian girl who's actually pretty decent, beat Valentina Shevchenko in kickboxing. Maybe the prelims, we had a couple little iffy fights on those, but genuinely a horrible card. I don't know why I'm talking good about this card. No, I revoke everything I said. This card was horrible. I hate it. I hate everything about these two fighters in the main event. Yeah, number 9, I'm going to go with Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev, UFC 313. UFC 313 was a very bad card. At the end of the day, you look at the main event, and other than Alex Pereira being in it, it was bad. Very boring. You know, nothing happened in this fight. Again, just a fight with nothing too remarkable. Maybe we can count Magomed Ankalaev kind of stunning Pereira at the end of that second round, but Magomed Ankalaev, he went in there, he had a game plan, he executed it perfectly, and came out as champion. Alex Pereira, he looked slow, he went in there, didn't look like the same Alex Pereira we've seen throughout his entire title reign, and it was kind of sad just watching Pereira just getting beat up. You know, pretty clear win for Magomed Ankalaev. There's not much to say about this card. You know, in the co-main event, it was kind of underwhelming as well. We were supposed to get Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker. That would have been a banger of a fight. Obviously, that literally got revoked from us. They took that away from us, and Dan Hooker had to pull out because of a hand injury like a week before the fight. Rafael Fiziev, he went in there, he filled in for Dan Hooker, and him and Gaethje, they had a decent little scrap. You know, nothing too crazy, back and forth moments. Fiziev won the first round, Gaethje won the last 2, and it was a close fight maybe, but nothing really remarkable happened. I keep saying that nothing remarkable happened, and that's how I judge things, dude. If nothing remarkable happens, if nothing that catches my eye, if there's nothing that I remember in these fights, well, then it wasn't a very good card, was it? If there's nothing really crazy remarkable that happened in these cards, well, then could it have really been that good? You know, other than that, at UFC 313, we had maybe like Jalen Turner versus Bahamondes. That was a decent fight. You know, Bahamondes showing his skills. We thought he was going to become a staple of the top 15, only to turn out he would get fraud checked by Fiziev a couple of months later. Decent card. You know, nothing too crazy. It was a pretty bad card, not even decent. There's a reason it's 9th out of the 10. Like, you're dead last almost. So, yeah. If Alex Pereira wasn't in the main event, it would probably be a lot longer. You know, Alex Pereira, he just brings a lot of star power to the UFC. He brings a lot of star power to cards. A lot of people were watching this card. I'm sure we had Justin Gaethje and Pereira in the same card. It under-delivered, didn't it? It just under-delivered. And yeah, man. Number 8, the 8th worst card out of the last 10 that we have gotten. For me, it is this one. UFC 318, obviously the most recent one. It wasn't horrible. It's just a glorified fight night in my opinion. You know, you look at this, I look at this as a fight night, you know. I wasn't really craving a pay-per-view after UFC 317. You know, it hadn't even been a full month. I wasn't in need of one. I wasn't really like, oh man, I need UFC. It's been so long. No, I just watched Charles get chinned, dude. My year was ruined. I'm joking. I'm not even that much of a Charles fan. But I was okay with just the fight nights we had gotten after UFC 317. It was nothing too crazy. We got this. It's a glorified fight night, boys. I mean, I understand it's $80 for it, but we didn't even have a title on the line. You know, BMF title doesn't count, does it? Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier, these two dudes went to war for Poirier's retirement fight. Obviously, there was a little bit of aura, kind of, I guess you could say, going into this because it was Poirier's last dance. You know, a bit of emotions, bit of sentimental value, but the main event was good. Other than that, though, I mean, Roman Kopylov versus Paulo Costa, really boring fight. Patricio Pitbull versus Danny Gate, really boring fight. Zell Huber versus MJ, decent scrap, I guess. And Kevin Holland versus D-Rod, one of the best fights of the year. I guess I'll say that, man. I mean, we had 2 of the best fights this year on this card, but we didn't even have an actual title on this card. You know, even UFC 312, I called that a horrible card. At least we had the title on it. This one, we didn't even have a real title on it. So I think you guys know what I mean when I think if we actually had an actual title fight on this card, well then I'd be happy. You know, I'd go in there and say, well, maybe this is not that bad, dude. If we put maybe like an Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev on this card, maybe a Drukas versus Kamza on this card, well then I could see this being a very good card. But I understand why the UFC did it, dude. It's Poirier's retirement fight. They want to add a little bit of, you put in Louisiana, you built the whole card around him. I understand that. Makes sense. Yeah. Poirier's retirement card, decent card, you know, if we didn't have an actual title, so how good can it actually be? And after this, number 7, I have my JDM got the belt back, bro. JDM versus Bilal Muhammad, UFC 315. It was an okay card, dude. I mean, Bilal Muhammad's in the main event. What more do you want from me guys? You want me to go in there and say this was a banger of a fight night, man? Bilal Muhammad walked in there and he marauder max, you know. The main event was good. One of the best fights this year. But other than that, we got a decent little co-main event. Valentina Shevchenko versus Manafredo. We got round of the year. I'd say we got round of the year in Jose Aldo versus Eamon Zahavi. So I'll give it that. Who else did we get on this card? We got Kyle Perpolik versus BSD. Very underwhelming as well. There's just not a lot happened. I gotta say, not a lot happened on this card. Not a lot of remarkable things. The prelims were dead, and Bilal Muhammad was in the main event. I'll say it again. It was okay. If I can't even remember what the 5th fight. What fight am I forgetting on this card? What was the featured fight? I don't remember. What, bro? If the featured fight, if I can't even remember, it couldn't have been that good, right? I assume so. Yeah, dude, this card it didn't under-deliver because we weren't expecting much of it. But decent little card we had here, dude. And now let's get into number 6. I don't want to talk about 315 for too long. Number 6, we had 310. The forgotten UFC pay-per-view. Everyone forgets about this, dude. When people think about UFC 310, they think, oh, bro, that was the card that Ian Gary and Shavkat Rakhmonov main evented. No. Actually, Pantoja was in the main event against this random Asian. I just called Kaya Sakura a random Asian, guys. I'm joking. I know the guy's like a decorated a decorated fighter in another company called Rising. I don't really care though, lad. I don't care. You know, not a lot happened on this card. I gotta say, not a lot of too much interesting stuff. The co-main event, I talked about it. It wasn't insane, you know. Shavkat, his aura ran out. He couldn't get a finish against Ian Gary. How good can you really be if you can't finish Ian Gary? Ian Gary, you went in there, you look decent, almost finished Shavkat. What else did we get on this card? We got Duho Choi versus Nate Landwehr. That was a banger. Not a low name value in that fight. Still a good fight. We had Bryce Mitchell versus Kron Gracie. And I don't even know what the features. I keep forgetting. If I'm forgetting what the main card consisted of, well, then it wasn't that good of a card. I gotta say, man, it wasn't that good of a card. Fun card in some instances. You know, the main event wasn't even that bad. It was pretty back and forth for the time it lasted. But it didn't last very long. I think it ended at the mid-second round. You know, Kai Sakura, he went in there, maybe kind of landed a decent little knee on Pantoja. He was doing decent in the strike. And you got the second, Kai Sakura got to the ground. It was clear he looked lost. He looked stupid. He looked slow. And Pantoja got it done. Decent card we had here. And I gotta say, after this, we had some decent ones. You know, after all the next two, I'd say they're decent cards. They're not bad cards. You know, everything before this, probably even this card, pretty bang average cards, if not bad cards. But the next cards we got, they're average cards or a little bit above average. The next card we got, you guys might know the guy who main evented this. His name's like John Jones, UFC 309. UFC 309, it was an okay card, you know. Stipe Miocic, the greatest heavyweight of all time. John Jones, the greatest light heavyweight of all time. It carries name value, you know, I'll give you that. The main event did carry name value. I'm sure a lot of hardcore whores from like 30 years ago tuned in. They were probably, oh bro, we got John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. This is a dream fight, bro. I mean, you hear voices in your head once in a lifetime. Yeah, not really. If you're an actual MMA fan who cares about it, we all know that Tom Aspinall should have been in Stipe's spot. I mean, look at this spotting Stipe, dude. Stipe's getting trick shotted. Look at this screenshot, dude. He's getting trick shotted. John Jones trick shotting Stipe, bro. This would never happen to Tom Aspinall. This picture is literally elderly abuse. Like, Stipe Miocic is 42. He shouldn't have been fighting, dude. He's a part-time MMA fighter. He's a firefighter, dude. He does MMA on the side. John Jones is a bum for doing that to that old man. It's just very disappointing. The main event shouldn't have happened, although it wasn't that boring. You know, it wasn't, like, boring, necessarily. I mean, Stipe Miocic kind of just looked like a punching bag in there. Maybe every once in a while he'd hit a little blitz on John Jones, and John Jones would just get caught and run away. But it was just not it. I wasn't really feeling it. The co-main event, very boring fight. I mean, Charles Oliveira was just pretty much controlling the whole fight, whole tempo. Maybe in the fifth round, not maybe, it did get exciting in the fifth round. You know, Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler 2. Fifth round was very exciting, dude. Michael Chandler almost finished Charles. I guess not very exciting if you're a Charles fan. You know, you were probably clenching your butt cheeks if you were a Charles fan. But as a Michael Chandler fan, I was actually getting really hyped. I got up from my seat when Michael Chandler was pouring those illegal back of the head shots. I was getting excited. And, yeah, not much on this card. We had a women's MMA fight on this card. How good could it really have been if we had a women's MMA fight on it? Other than that, like, not a lot. Not a lot on this card. Maybe we had Bone Nickel versus, what the kid's name? Paul Craig. Very boring fight. We had Mauricio Ruffy versus James Lomtop. Decent fight. But, you know, not a lot of name value on this. Actually, a lot of name value on this card is what I meant. We had Bone Nickel versus Bone Nickel on this card. A lot of people know Bo Nickel. John Jones on this card, Stipe Miocic on this card. But, I mean, when you look at it with context, it's not that good of a card, I gotta say. The next two cards, actually, all the cards remaining, they're good cards. Let's put it that way. The next card we got, UFC 316. This is something I'm gonna touch on a little bit later. When a card has vibes, it just had vibes. When a card has vibes, it just makes the card 10 times better. UFC 316, something about this card just made me have good vibes. You know, maybe it was Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley, one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. I was excited for this. I genuinely thought he was going to get his belt back. I genuinely thought he was going to chin Rob. So the pre-fight antics, I was excited. I was really happy for this fight. I was like making a lot of videos the week before. I was daydreaming about this. Obviously, the main event didn't go my way, but it was decently competitive before the finish. Merab actually got a finish, so the main event ended in a finish, which is good. You know, a lot of these fights, the main event didn't. A lot of these cards that were ranking, the main event didn't end in a finish. But Merab finished Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley got finished for the first time in his career. I don't count that loss to Chito Vera, brother. But still, in the co-main event, we had Kayla Harrison dominating. You got caught. I got dominated. Yeah, she dominated Juliana Horseface Pennington. Very fun, you know. He got her in like a Kimura. That young man, Kayla Harrison, finished Juliana Pena. That was fun. Then also we had that little moment with Amanda Nunes making her return. She faced off, she didn't face Kayla Harrison, but they did a face off, if you guys know what I mean. So that was cool, kind of seeing Amanda Nunes back after a couple years later. I don't know why I'm saying it like she fought. If you didn't watch UFC 316, you probably think I was saying Amanda Nunes returned to fight. Amanda Nunes faced off against Kayla Harrison at the end of the fight, but it signified that Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes will be going at it in time, which is a dream fight. You know, a lot of people, if you're a diehard women's MMA fan, I'm not. I couldn't care less, brother. Nah, but I actually could. I do care about this fight. You know, maybe Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes can go out there and have a decent little fun fight. Of course, for women's MMA. You know, when I say fun fight for women's MMA and fun fights for men's, two different things. Very, very different things. I'm getting sidetracked here. Other than that, on this card, we had Mara Batista, embarrassing patchy mix, dude. We had Kevin Holland versus Vicente Luque. That was a very fun fight. Opened up the card, just very crafty little fight. And I like this card, dude. The vibes were there. Again, the vibes. When a card has vibes, it has vibes. And vibes just make a card 10 times better. Yeah. And now let's talk about number 3. Number 3. Another Merab card, UFC 311. This is the third best card out of the last 10. I feel like I say that a lot in this video, but come on. UFC 311, dude. When I look at UFC 311, I think very highly of this card, and you guys want to know why? The vibes, bro. The vibes, brother, man. Shout out to Vera, brother. Shout out to Vera. It was a fun card. You know, obviously we had fight of the year. Merab versus Umar. The screenshot right here on screen. We had Jamal Hill versus Yuri. Another fight of the year. We had a couple other entertaining fights like RDR beating Kevin Holland in pretty dominant fashion, making a statement, and now the kid's about to be one win away from a title shot if he beats Robert Whittaker this weekend. Again, just a good card, and it makes me think, what if we got Arman Tsarukyan versus Islam Makhachev in the main event? What if Arman Tsarukyan didn't pull it a day before? What if Moicano was not sent to get sacrificed against Islam Makhachev? Maybe this card could have been one of the best cards I've ever seen. Obviously, it didn't happen. It sucks. Moicano just got finished in the first round, which kind of killed it. You know, we were coming off Merab versus Umar. We were hyped for the main event, and then it kind of just... I guess we weren't that hyped, and we probably all knew that Moicano was just going to get ragdolled against by Islam. But, you know, maybe we kind of could have hoped and prayed that Moicano did a little bit more than he did. But, you know, it didn't happen. Moicano was just... He's just not that guy, obviously, now we know, after he lost to Benito Dariush. But still, though, dude, it was a good card. UFC 311 was fun, and I'm really fond of this fight. You know, Umar versus Merab, I think highly of that fight. I really it makes me happy. Like, UFC, dude, that's how you know UFC is my life. When I think about Merab and Umar, a smile is put on my face, to say the least. And talking about a smile is put on my face, a smile is put on my face when I think about UFC 317, in particular, Joshua Van, brother. Joshua Van versus Brendan Royval. That's a fight that I'm going to tell my kids about. That is one of the best fights I've ever seen. One of the fastest, best paced UFC fights ever. And obviously we had this. What you're seeing on screen, Charles Oliveira's lifeless body falling towards the canvas before Ilia Topuria rained down two vicious, aggressive, life-ending hammer fist onto the chin of Charles Oliveira. What a card this was, dude. International Fight Week. Everyone was talking about it, bro. No one cares about International Fight Week. Dana White failed us for International Fight Week. Lucas Tracy dropped a 30-minute rant talking about how International Fight Week was just a dead card, man. I was one of those guys who said International Fight Week is a great card. International Fight Week is a really good card. I dropped my own 30-minute video talking about how International Fight Week is actually a crafty little card. And it was. It delivered. Don't judge a fight before it happens, dude. I'm Dana White. Don't judge a card before it happens. The main event, brilliant, dude. It was super fun seeing Charles get flatlined. Co-main event, Kai Kara-France versus Pantoja. We had a routine. Pantoja title defense, got Kai Kara-France out of there. I mean, who likes Kai Kara-France? I think we were all excited when Kai Kara-France, that stupid freaking thing he does. I think we were all excited when Pantoja finished him. Joshua Van versus Royval. Do I need to speak? Do I need to even speak about that fight? One of the best fights I've ever seen. We had two crafty little prospects in Peyton Talbot and Felipe Lima. That was a fun fight. We just had a lot of good fights in this card, dude. The vibes delivered. The vibes really delivered for International Fight Week. And when I talk about vibes in UFC cards, I think this UFC 314, it had the best vibes out of realistically any UFC card in the last 5 years, bro. Miami, whenever the UFC goes to Miami, I don't know, the Miami vibe just brings something to the card. You know, this was just a banger of a card. The hype going into this card was there. You know, on paper, this card delivered. When you look at it, when you look after the card, it still delivered. Just a great card, and I gotta say, I didn't get to watch this card live. You know, I had prior commitments. I had prom the night before. I had to delete Instagram, dude. I had to delete YouTube. I had to delete TikTok to avoid spoilers for this card. And well, I watched it the next day. I got the main event spoiled, but that made me so mad. And I seen like Volk with his hands up on my story somehow. I don't even know how I saw that, but I pretty much got the main event spoiled. But other than that, dude, just a fun card, man. I'm sure it was a lot better for people who actually watched it live. You know, there's something about watching UFC farts, UFC cards live that just make it better, dude. We had Dominic Reyes going out there, chinning Nikita Krylov in the first round in Jose Aldo, Conor McGregor fashion. We had Patricio Pitbull versus Yair Rodriguez. Everyone talking about that fight like it was a snooze fest. It wasn't that bad. I had a good time watching that fight. I don't know about you guys, but I had a good time watching that fight. We had Gene Silva versus Bryce Mitchell. The tension going into that fight was crazy, dude. That was a banger, dude. That was the people's main event for UFC 314, dude. Bryce Mitchell's fighting this weekend. Let's see if he wins. Who knows how good that one will age for Gene Silva. But Gene Silva went in there. He kind of made Bryce Mitchell look silly, and he made me look silly as well because I predicted Bryce Mitchell. I thought Bryce Mitchell was going to be able to hold Gene Silva down. I think he was going to be able to fraud check Gene Silva, and that didn't happen, dude. I shouldn't have doubted Gene Silva because Gene Silva is a world beater. But I'm not talking about that today, dude. The main event, great main event. You know, crafty little main event. We had the experienced veteran, one of the greatest featherweights of all time, taking on Diego Lopez. Diego Lopez is an up-and-comer, or he was an up-and-comer at the time. He was coming off a win to Brian Ortega. Just a very fun fighter, Diego Lopez. Diego Lopez dropped Volk. Both of these guys were busted up by the end of the fight. Fun fight. And I'm very fond of this card. We also had Paddy Pimblett and Michael Chandler, two household names. What a card this was, bro. What a genuinely good card this was. The UFC 314 card. I think it's one of those cards where we can look back on and just say, wow, the UFC really spoiled us for this card. Hopefully that's what we're going to be saying for UFC 320. But yeah, man, that is my, I guess, rankings for the last 10 cards we've gotten. If you guys agree, let me know down below. If you guys disagree, let me know down below. If you guys think I'm an idiot, let me know down below in the comment section. That's going to do it for today's video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. MMA Outpost out.